Hello class, today we're looking at equations with variables on both sides one more time. This is our third lesson, but this time we're going to incorporate what we call the distributive property, within our equation. So let's review real fast. What do we remember to do? What are the steps that we use in order to solve this particular equation? Well, we know that there are three of them, and the three steps are: one, get the letters on one side of the equal sign. How do I do that? I'm going to add the opposite. Step number two, get the numbers on the other side of the equal sign. Again, how do I do that? I add the opposite. And then the third thing, now that our numbers are on one side, our letters are on the other, all we have to do is solve. If I have a multiply, we do a divide. If I have a divide, we do a multiply. So let's see if we can review solving this particular equation right here. Okay, so let me kind of move this around so I can get to it a little bit easier. Okay, so the first thing I see in this particular problem is I need to change this subtraction. So I'm going to change the subtraction to addition, next number to its opposite. Again, the only reason why I do that is to prevent careless mistakes. Okay, so now, I like my letters to be on the left, so I'm going to move this 7x over to be with the 3x. So I'm going to start by add 7x plus negative 7x plus negative 12. Now, in class, we've been looking at 7x plus negative 12 and then plus negative 7x. It makes no difference which order you do that. Okay, but this still is the new thing that I added to the right-hand side, so I need to make sure that I add it to the left-hand side as well. So I end up with 3x plus 4 plus, and now the new thing that I added on the right, which was negative 7x. Now we put like things together. Okay, so on the left-hand side, I've got a 3x and a negative 7x that can go together. And so when I add those, I end up with negative 4x. And then I bring down the 4 that I haven't dealt with yet. And then over on the left-hand side, my two 7x's, they go away. They make 0x, which we know is just 0. So we don't put anything, equals negative 12, because the negative 12 comes down. All right, so now I need to, that's step number one. I got my letters together. So now I need to get my numbers together on the other side. So if my letters are on the left, I need to put my numbers on the right. So again, we do the same thing. Negative 4x plus 4 plus, and then to move that positive 4, I add a negative 4 to it. So then on the other side, I've got negative 12 plus, and then I add the same thing that I added on the left-hand side, the negative 4. So now we simplify again. My 4's will zero out, and I'm left with negative 4x is equal to, and on the right-hand side, I end up with negative 12 plus negative 4, which gives me negative 16. Now, how do I get rid of the multiply by negative 4? We do a divide by negative 4. We end up with x is equal to positive 4. So the steps that we use to solve equations, there's three of them. And the things that we've been doing over the last couple of days, the last couple of lessons, is figuring out what are some things I've got to do before I can get to this. And that's what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn one more thing that we do above getting letters on one side, numbers on the other. Sometimes you have to do some things. So today we're going to learn about the distributive property. Now this is what the distributive property says. Okay, it says I can take A and multiply it by the sum of B and C. So it basically says I can add first, then multiply, or I could multiply first, then add. And this happens, or this will happen, anytime where A, B, and C are any real numbers. It will work. Okay, so let's kind of look at some things real quick. Okay, so not that page. Let's go on down to this one. Okay, so if I had regular plain old numbers, like if I plugged in for A, B, and C a 2, a 3, and a 4, order of operations would tell us to add these first and then multiply it by the 2 on the outside. And that's what this example is saying here. 3 plus 4 is 7, and then 7 times 2, because we know that 2 right up next to that parenthesis right there just means to multiply. So 7 times 2 gives us 14. Well, that's one way we could work this problem. Well, another way we could work this problem is actually pass the 2 out to the 3. Because if you look at what distribute really means, distribute means to pass out, which is the root word for distributive, to pass out. So I want to pass this 2 out to the 3, and I want to pass this 2 out to the 4, and then we add their products together. So if we look at this example, we've got 2 times 3, which is 6. We've got 2 times 4, which is 8, and if I add those two together, I still get 14, the same answer that I got if I did it with order of operations. But in algebra, we don't just put numbers in there. We actually put letters in there. So here is a problem that incorporates the distributive property to it. Okay, so in this one right here, we've got our normal 3 steps. Get our letters on one side, get our numbers on the other, and then we solve. Well, this is a pre-step that we have to do. We've got to get rid of parentheses first. So I need to distribute this 2 to everything inside the parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to, basically this 2 says I need 2 of everything that's there. So I need 2 3x's. And if I had 2 3x's, I would end up with 6x, because 2 times 3 is 6, and we just carry the x on down. Plus, now I also need 2 4's. So 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, so 3x plus 4, and then I have a multiply by 2 on the outside. I just pass the 2 out to everything on the inside through multiplication, and you simplify your equations, or you simplify your parentheses, sorry. Okay, so now once we've gotten rid of the parentheses, it now looks like just a regular 2-step equation. Okay, x's, get the letters on one side. Well, if you'll notice, there's only one letter, so they're already together here on the left. So I just need to move my 8 over to be with the 23. And I do that by adding the opposite. So I do 6x plus 8 plus its opposite equals 23 plus, well, the negative 8 is what I added on the left, so I need to add it on the right as well. So now my 8's go away. I'm left with 6x equals, and I've got 23 plus negative 8, and 23 plus negative 8 gives me 15. Now how do I get rid of a multiply by 6? I do a divide by 6, and I end up with x equaling 2.5 is our answer. Okay, so sometimes we have to do a step prior to the 3 steps that we've been looking at. Get letters on one side, numbers on the other, and solve. Okay, and one of those prior steps is get rid of our parentheses. So let's see if we can try it again with a little bit more complicated problem. Okay, well this one you'll notice it's got parentheses on both sides. So the first thing that we do, first thing that I would do for sure, is I see that there's a minus here I need to change. So I'm going to change this minus to a plus next to its opposite. Now by all means you don't have to do that, but it does help prevent careless mistakes. So now, in this one I need to distribute the negative 4 to each member of this set of parentheses. So I do negative 4 times 2x to get negative 8x plus the negative 4 times negative 10 to get positive 40. Now I need to also do it on the other side. So now this one I've got a 2 and I need to distribute that 2 to the x. So 2 times x, or 2 times 1x is 2x plus, and then 2 times 5 is 10. Most common mistake that we make is we pass the number in front out to one of the things in the parentheses, but not pass it out to the other. And now, if you'll notice, once I got rid of my parentheses, it looks just like a multi-step equation. Get letters on one side, numbers on the other. So I'm going to move this 2x over to be with the 8x. So 2x plus negative 2x plus 10 equals negative 8x plus 40 plus the negative 2x I added on the right-hand side. So now my negative 8x and my negative 2x could go together to make a negative 10x plus, and I bring the 40 down, equals, and then my 2x's, they should go away if we did everything correctly, and we're left with 10 on the right-hand side. So step number 1, done. Okay, we've taken care of the letters. All my letters are together on the left-hand side. Now I need to get my numbers on the right. So I need to move the 40 over to be with the 10. So negative 10x plus 40 plus the negative 40, what I use in order to move it to the other side, equals 10 plus negative 40. Okay, so my 40s go away here on the left. And I'm left with negative 10x equals, and on the right-hand side, I'm left with negative 30. And now, how do I get rid of my multiply by negative 10? I do a divide by negative 10, and I end up with x is equal to 3, just like that. Okay, so I've got one more that I would like for you to do, but do this one on your own. Pause the video and answer this question. Okay, let's see how you did. Well, the first thing in this one, I see a minus that I need to take care of, so I'm going to take care of that. Now we distribute. Okay, so I'm going to distribute the 2 out to the 2x and to the 5. So 2 times 2x gives me 4x. 2 times 5 gives me 10 equals 3 times 3x gives me 9x, plus 3 times negative 4 gives me negative 12. Okay, now we're just at a regular multi-step equation. So step number 1, get my letters on one side. So 9x plus negative 12 plus negative 9x, what I use in order to move the 9x, and then 4x plus 10 plus negative 9x. Okay, so I put my x's together on the left. 4x and negative 9x make negative 5x plus 10 equals, now my 9x's on the right go away and we're left with negative 12. Okay, so now I need to move my 10 over to be with the negative 12. So negative 5x plus 10 plus negative 10 equals negative 12 plus the negative 10, the thing I added on the left in order to move it to the right. So we end up with, our 10's go away, we're left with negative 5x is equal to negative 22. Now we divide both sides by negative 5, and you end up with x is equal to 4.4. Or the first time we worked this problem, 22 over 5. Now, I make mention of the first time that we worked this. If you remember, about 3 weeks ago, we did a series of questions where we learned about one-step equations. And there was one question that I worked really, really fast. Well, you told me you couldn't do it. Well, what you just realized, hopefully, is that you just worked the same question that we worked back on September the 18th when we started this journey to solve equations. We just solved the same exact one. So, with that in mind, we know that to solve equations, there are 3 basic steps. But sometimes we may have to do some steps above. We may have to combine some things, put some letters together, put some numbers together, right? Or we may have to use the distributive property so that we end up with an equation that just has a letter and a number equals a letter and a number. And then we can start with these 3 steps. Get your letters on one side, get your numbers on the other. For each one of those, we add the opposite. And then last but not least, we solve to find our solution. So until next time.